We are going to start a new chapter with surface area, but our first lesson, lesson 6.1, is on drawing 3D figures. And our EQ is very similar. How can you draw 3D figures? It almost sounds like an art lesson, and it is going to be very art-like lesson in terms of drawing and things like that. So I hope you enjoy this lesson, kind of like a down tempo before we start something more complicated. Now, as you can see, my background today is not a lined paper. It's going to be the dot paper. I think dot paper is easier for you to draw these 3D figures. These are square dot paper, but if you have isometric dot paper, which are going to be like slanted sideways, um, those are easier to draw as well. But I'm just going to use this type of dot paper, square dot paper, to draw my figures. Because we're going to work with 3D figures, it's important to know the definition of a 3D figure or three-dimensional figure. Usually when you have a three-dimensional figure, we can call them as solid. And anything that you see around you, like a cup or a cube, a box, those are going to be solid or three-dimensional figure. And it has three different things. You have length, width, and depth. So for length and width, you have it on a flat surface, flat figure to two-dimensional figures, but then you add the depth to make it three-dimensional. So to draw that, for example, I have the length, let's say length and width, right? Usually you have the length and the width of a flat sheet of paper, and then when you add the depth, right here, then now it's going to be a 3D figure. Now, we are going to look into different polyhedron, which are going to be three-dimensional figures, obviously, but with faces that are all polygons. In our chapter, we're going to focus on a number of different polyhedrons. The first two things are going to be the prism and pyramids. A prism, by definition, is a polyhedron, and you'll have to have two parallel and identical bases. So for example, I'll draw a triangular prism like this. Okay, so I have a triangular prism, and the name of this prism is going to be determined by the base. It can be either this way or it could be standing up, and they kind of look like a Toblerone chocolate box, right? So you're going to have two parallel identical bases. So our bases in this case is going to be the triangles, because the name of the figure is based on the bases. So these are the bases, parallel, identical. And the sides, or we call that lateral faces, which are going to be surrounding around, they're going to be parallelogram. So it could be either square, rectangle, or parallelogram. So like I said, either it can be facing sideways, or it can be facing up like this. Okay. And it's going to be a prism. So the sides are always going to be parallelogram in some sort, and I have the bases like this. Okay, so these are an example of prism. You can have different types of prism. You can have rectangular prism, you can have pentagonal prism, you can have octagonal prism. So whatever you have on the base is going to determine the name of the prism. The second polyhedron that we're going to look into is going to be called a pyramid. And we know pyramid well because we see it in Egypt and our famous monuments and stuff like that. Basically, you're going to have only one base, unlike a prism. And let's say I draw a pyramid on the side. So I'm just going to draw three lines and just connect them like this. So let's say I have this pyramid. My pyramid will have one base, which is going to be the bottom side here. And as you can see, my sides, or my lateral sides, are going to be all triangles. So just like the prisms, whatever the name of the pyramid is going to be determined by the shape of your base. So for the left one, we have a triangular prism, and for the right one, we have a rectangular pyramid. Cylinders are probably very self-explanatory. A cylinder is a solid, so it's not going to be a polyhedron because the sides are not going to be polygons, but they are going to be a solid figure. So it's a solid. And just like the prisms, you're going to have two parallel identical bases, but they're going to be in a circular form. So two parallel, identical, and circular base. So you have to make sure you have all these information together. So let's say I draw circle, circle, connect, connect. Now I have a cylinder. Usually the parts that are not visible are going to be drawn with dotted lines. So I'm going to go ahead and try that. So dotted line. So the bottom part is going to be dotted. The bottom, the bases are going to be right here because the sides, we can't really call them bases because if you place a cylinder to sideways, it's going to roll. It's not going to stop unless you have a friction there. For lateral faces, even though if you would cut one of the sides and unfold it, it's going to make a rectangular shape. We don't really call that rectangle because it's just going to be a round shape. So we don't really have a shape for that. And then we have another one called cones. And it is the cones that you think of like an ice cream cone or a birthday hat. It is also a solid. And it is only going to have one circular base and one vertex at the end. So if you think of a birthday hat or an upside down ice cream cone, it's going to be a cone. Okay, so the base is going to be this shape, and then you'll have a vertex at the very end. So just like a birthday hat. Now this lesson is interesting because it actually tells you to practice drawing different shapes. So I'm going to try to do step-by-step drawing for those who may have a challenging time. If you're already artistic and you know how to draw these things, you can just quickly sketch it and then move forward. First, I'm going to draw a rectangular prism. A rectangular prism can be in many different sides. Actually, all 6 sides are going to be rectangles, right? And you can make it skinny, you can make it fat, you can make it flat, and all sorts of things. You're going to first draw 2 identical rectangular bases. They can be either facing forward, like this, or they can be more up top. And as you can see, I'm trying to use the dots to guide me to draw the shapes. So I drew 2 identical rectangular bases, either this way, the first way, or the one on the right side. Either way is fine. When you're using dot graph, it's easier for you to follow through, I think. Okay, and then I'm going to connect the corresponding vertices or points. So I'm going to connect the same points that you see identically. Okay, same thing here. The bottom one goes to bottom, the top right, like this. Okay, now if you just draw it like this, it looks like a 3-dimensional picture, but not quite the ones that you may see in this textbook. So what you're going to do is you can use an eraser and you can go ahead and erase parts that are hidden into dashed lines. So for example, if I'm looking at this picture from this angle, the parts that are going to be invisible are going to be here, and then also here, and the sides here. Okay, so the dotted lines are going to be invisible. Other parts, I can see them. for the ones on the right side, same thing. I'm going to have the view like this, and my parts that are hidden are going to be the sides here and then the two bottom ones. Okay, this is how you can draw rectangular prisms. How about drawing a pyramid? I'm going to draw a triangular pyramid, and this is going to be easier because you're always going to have the base on the bottom. It's not going to be sideways like the prisms, because sometimes your prisms can have your bases on the side if it's lying on the side. So if it's a triangular pyramid, I'm going to draw a triangle starting, and it can be any type of triangle. Okay, and then I'm going to draw a point, which is going to be the vertex, and I'm just going to make it right here. Okay, usually the vertex is going to be directly above your triangle's endpoint. Okay, and what you're going to do is you're going to draw straight lines from each vertex to the dot that you created. Okay, so you have something like this, and then if you notice for a pyramid, you're not going to be able to see any of the sides if you're looking straight ahead. So I'm going to go ahead and erase the parts that are invisible to make sure that it's dotted. So I'm going to go ahead and dot, 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 erase it. Okay, so I am going to have a triangle pyramid like this. If it's a different type of pyramid, you can always start with the shape, either square, triangle, or pentagon and things like that. You start with a shape and then you draw a point on the top, directly on top, and then just extend the lines. And that's how you draw a pyramid. The last part of this lesson is going to be drawing views. So what we're going to do is we're going to assume that you are looking at a shape in the eye level straight ahead. So you're not going to look from the side. It's going to be either from the top, from the front, or from the side. So depending on the shape, you may see different type of figure. Sometimes you may see the same shape all across. For example, let's say we have a cylinder. Cylinder is going to look like a soda can or a Pringles can, something that's circular. So because I'm not really seeing you guys face to face at this time, I drew a cylinder for you. During this lesson, if you want to take a look at different objects, if you can find different things like cylinders or cones or different types of boxes, you can use it to assist you because sometimes having that visual helps you to understand a little more. So for cylinder, I'm going to have front view, side view, and a top view. Having the front view means you're going to have the shape in your eye level. You're not going to be tilted either up or down or from the side way. You're going to look dead front. And in this case, cylinder is going to actually give you a rectangular form. Grant that if you have a soda can, you're going to have those edges that are a little round on the side. But if you have like Pringles can, it might be easier for you to understand, or like a foam roller. And then from the side, it's going to look also like a rectangle. They actually should look identical because your height is not going to change, your width is not going to change. Circular form is going to look the same from whichever direction that you look at. Now from the top though, if you look at the Pringles can, from the top it's going to be a circular format. So depending on the shape, some of the sides are going to have the identical shape, some of the sides are going to have different shapes. So this was for cylinder. So I actually wrote down all 4 figures that we covered, cone, triangular prism, and rectangular pyramid. If you can pause this video and go ahead and draw the front, side, and top, you can go ahead and do that. If you're not sure, you can watch the video so I can draw the shapes and then try to imagine those shapes inside of your head. Okay, so I have the drawings here. Not the best drawing, but you can have an idea of how things look like. So cone. Like I said, you can pause this video at any moment if you want to try and draw these things, and I'm just going to go ahead and draw them as if you are pausing and taking your time. So cone from the front, if you put the cone from the front view, is going to be a triangle. From the side is also going to be another triangle, but from the top it's going to look like a circle. For a triangular prism, depending on the sides that is positioned, you're going to have a different result, but I have a shape that's on the side way. So from the front, which is going to be your view from here, you're going to have a triangular front because that's going to be the basis. And then for the sides, you're going to have rectangular figures like this. And then from the top, you're also going to see a rectangular figure because it's going to be one of the sides that's on the bottom. For rectangular pyramid, from the front, you're going to see more triangle. For the side, you're going to see more triangle. And then from the top, you're going to see a rectangle. So that's how things are going to work for front, side, and top. So your homework is going to be from the textbook, page 254. And for homework, I actually want you to try all the questions from number 1 through 6 and 8 to 20 for even questions. And if you finish watching this video, you can go ahead and draw a ice cream cone next to your name for some extra credit.